technically your first combine, I think, as a head coach. Brandon, how's it been so far?
It's been good. It's good to be back here with the rest of the NFL. I think that's what makes the NFL special are the people in it. So to see all the different teams and all the people, that make the NFL what it is, coaches, the future players, staff, media, for everyone to be back in one space, I think that's a really, really good thing.
Yeah, we haven't talked to you since you made some changes in addition to the coaching staff. Curious if you could go through those guys.
Yeah, really. Sure. Yeah, I'm really excited about Ryan Ficken as our special teams coordinator. It was an opportunity that I was really excited about. He comes from a really good pedigree in Minnesota with Mike Prefer. Has been there under a lot of really good head coaches, and then he's coached a lot of players that I'm really familiar with, Harrison Smith, Cordero Patterson, some guys that I really know well, have a lot of respect for their game, and then some coaches that I've worked with in the past, Jonathan Gannon, Jeff Howard, Kevin Stefanski. Just know a lot about him and felt like, his vision really fit where we're trying to go as a football team, and I really felt like it was a great opportunity to get that done and have him team up with Chris Gould, who I was with in Denver in 2019, who's got a kicking background. He's been Tom McMahon's assistant, Joe DeCamillis. He's been around a lot of really good special teams coordinators, and I know him really well. He's great with the players, and so I really think those two guys together are going to give us a lift, and I feel like they fit where we're going as a team. And I think from an evaluation standpoint, too, I just know that, like, Ryan's background in terms of, the back end of the roster, defensive players, offensive players that play teams, he's been really instrumental in the evaluation process. They had a rookie returner this year from Iowa State that he onboarded that was fantastic, and he's got that background. He kind of was the guy that, changed Cordero from being just a returner, moved him to gunner, and kind of put him on his path to where he is now. And so I just, it was a really good opportunity for us. And then, was able to get Tom Arth on our offensive staff as a offensive assistant working in the passing game. And, Tom and I go a long ways back, and just his background as a player in the NFL and other leagues. And then just us being together at Carroll, he was, we had to compete really hard for his services. He was in demand. So it's awesome to partner up again and have him team up with our offensive staff. And I think he was really excited to learn, from Joe and Shane and Chris and, Cogs and that group of guys, Derek Foster and, Frank Smith, earned an opportunity with Miami, which is really exciting for Frank and Kelly, their family. And that's what you're hoping for. You're hoping your people get good opportunities. And so that gave us a chance to onboard Tom. And then, we hired Brendan Nugent from New Orleans. I've really known him since 2011 when he was at William & Mary. And then he's been in New Orleans for the last 7 years, and just have so much respect for how they do things. And his relationship with Joe was obviously really important. But I've known him for a long time, and he's been around a lot of really good offensive football and a lot of good offensive lines. That offensive line in New Orleans has been one of the integral parts to their success. So that was exciting for me to get him on board. And then, we were able to get Mike Heastan, on our staff. And I worked with Mike in Denver, and his father Harry is the line coach at Notre Dame, one of the best line coaches in the in really any level, and just really felt like he could add a lot to our offensive football staff, just knowing where we come from on defense and our belief system, having been a big part of what Vic was doing in Denver, and then me and Ronaldo being with him. He's a coach that I know that can coach on either side of the football, and really want to take this opportunity to build from within. I think, getting a guy like him on your staff allows you to build from within and go a couple different places. And then we promoted Johnny Timu to, a defensive assistant. And that was important because there were some people that were after his services. And again, it just allows us to kind of grow from within. So
with Mike, you're expecting him to coach on both sides?
He's going to be coaching on offense. He's going to be working, primarily with the O-line and the tight end group.
Brandon, last year you said at this point that offensive line, you wanted to keep your quarterback upright.
Yeah.
Is this year the plan to fix the defense, especially with some of the mistakes and some of the stuff that you saw towards the end of the season?
Yeah, I felt like last year we really executed our game plan at a high level. And I think that going into where I was last year, that was my primary focus. And I felt like, and teaming up with Tom and John and Dean and Ed, I think that was our focus. And I felt like we were able to execute that. And I felt like you saw that this year what the output was from our offensive football team, kind of how that allowed us to play. And I think on defense, up front and then, in the secondary, are going to be some areas that we look at. But I know that Tom spoke to you guys yesterday. I mean, it's really about us building a complete football team. I think that's the goal of this offseason for us, and is to become a complete team. And I think that, and a deep team. And I think that those, two words you're going to hear me say a lot, because I know that will allow us to be as good as we can be.
Brandon, I kind of wanted to build off of that. So, when I watch some of the guys that you guys have, when you're choosing third room, when you're spinning them down over time, guys like Robert, guys like December Rosu, who dropped in the class and add value as a pass rusher. When you're trying to address some of the needs defensively, how do you balance getting versatile skill sets versus getting guys who maybe have dominant, particular traits? How do you kind of balance that out as you address it?
Yeah, I think what you got to do is you got to identify critical factors in each position, and I think that's something that we spent a lot of time doing. And what we try to do is we try to connect our scouting department to our coaching staff and say, hey, this is the vision that we have for these players, and these are relevant comps in the league. Make sure that they understand, like, hey, this is an elite starter comp, backup comp, and then have like a hybrid, model of that player too, because we know that there's a lot of different shapes and sizes of good players. And so what our goal is with the Chargers is for our guys to scout more players, not less. And I think that if you get too specific, then, what's going to happen is you're not going to have enough players to play for you. So I think on defense, we really value versatility. But I think that what we've undertaken here and what's ongoing is just, establishing our way of playing, from a personnel standpoint. And I think that this offseason will allow us to look, the way that we want to look.
Brandon, talk about your staff. You use the term build from within.
Mm-hmm.
What can you explain that?
Yeah, it's really tough to go outside your organization to onboard coaches that really understand what you do and how you do it, why you do it. It's really competitive. Coaches and the best coaches are really hard to get out of contract. And you saw, a bunch of our coaches this year that I'm really proud of. You saw Mike Wilhoit, Derek Ansley interview for defensive coordinator jobs. You saw Kevin Koger, interview for an offensive coordinator job. Joe interviewing for a head coaching job. And there's going to be so much more of that, and that's a good thing. But when good things happen for those types of people, what you want to be able to do is have talented enough people within your organization that you can move up into those positions. And that it doesn't happen in all cases, but I think the sign of a healthy organization is when you've built a really talented staff, a loyal staff that you've developed from within, that understands exactly what you're doing and why you're doing it. And I think that, getting this group of guys allows us to grow from within and not have to go to other places to find something that we're looking for.
With Michael Davis, you mentioned he's been up and down, but you like his game. I think he's still a capable guy to be a number one cornerback in your team.
Yeah, I think Mike's a starting corner in the league. I think that number one term gets thrown out there. There's not very many of them in the league. So I think that Vato, he improved a lot as a player. I think he has a lot stronger sense of his game now, especially playing in our system, which is a different system. From a technique standpoint, from a scheme standpoint, I think he was asked to do a lot of new things, and I think that, he had a lot of good moments within the season. And I know that he's at our facility working hard right now at his game, and that's what we're looking for, is for him to improve, because he's still a young player. I know he's been in the league now for a minute, but that doesn't mean that he can improve a lot. And so that's what we're trying to do this offseason, is get him in that comfort zone, really take his game, and make that jump that we think he's capable of making.
Brandon, it seems like for the last 3 or 4 years now, people have been talking about how good the wide receiver classes are. I'm curious if you have a theory on why the wide receiver classes are so good year after year after year.
Well, it's the truth, man. And all you had to do is look at the guys that we had to defend this year. I mean, and watching the film from last year, my first, go of it as a head coach, I mean, that class was unbelievable, and I think this class is really good too, and I think what you're seeing is these kids that come up nowadays, the passing game is at the front of everything that they do, from when they're a young kid to when they're in high school, and the passing game is where it's at. And, with the advent of flag football, like kind of that proliferation, I know, just like living in California, I'm from Cleveland, Ohio. I mean, we didn't have flag football like in the winter time. Well, here, like, my sons are already signed up. Like, they start practice like next week, and my kids are 7 and 5. So you can imagine, like, that amount of improvement that you can make when you're throwing and catching from when you're 5 and 7 all the way to you're 18. And I think, that's what you're seeing. You're seeing the skill level of these guys really translate to the NFL game because they're ready, and I think the passing game in college, you're seeing a lot of pro coaches go to college and really train these guys the right way. And I think that, it's just in the 2 years that I've been the head coach, and, not through all the receivers here from a formal interview standpoint, but they're very impressive from a knowledge standpoint. It used to be where hey, I only know one position. Well, now they're moved around. They know outside receiver, inside receiver. Hey, they're very aware of pass concepts. You could say, hey, man, 3rd and 8. Hey, we're playing against single safety man. Draw me your favorite play. And, hey, man, they're going up there and ripping it. So I think that foundation and knowledge has been a big reason for those guys' success.
Building off the offense, one of the things we spoke with Seth and I prior to this season was trying to put some new things on Justin Herbert's plate in terms of understanding the offense, really kind of taking on the challenge of growing as a quarterback. And we kind of saw some of the results this year. So for you guys as a staff now, how do you plan on approaching this offseason to continue to push him forward and get the same kind of layers of growth that you saw in 2020?
Yeah, I think anytime you have system continuity, you're going to really create a comfort zone within the player. And I think that's something that is happening for him right now. And I think there's going to be a confidence that knowing that he's been through this and now, all the things that he's actually experienced live, we can build off that, whether it was good or bad. And I think that we have a much firmer understanding because, of how he plays and what he's comfortable with. And, last year, there were a lot of questions about, what are you going to do for him? How are you going to build this offense? And I think I said, we're going to build it for him and we're going to build it with him. And I think that, and that's exactly what we did. And I think now that he has that inventory of experiences, whether, it's a specific part of the passing game, protection, a certain concept, a drop, footwork, progression, and then just all the time score situation. He's got now double the inventory of experiences. He has inventory on all these coordinators, right? Hey, I've faced this style of defense. And I've been in these situations. It's not a big deal for me, and I'm just going to keep building. So now what we got to keep doing is just, keep expanding that knowledge, really emphasize the things he does well, and then, onboard a bunch of personnel that can bring out the best in them. And that's going to be our mission here over the next 3 months.
Chris Harris is going to be a free agent. Just at star inside, you might have a holdout. I guess what's your plan there? I know Tom mentioned this yesterday, and obviously we talked about Asante having that flex to play outside inside.
Yeah.
Sort of, what's your plan as far as addressing that?
Yeah, I mean, it's a big spot, as you guys know. I mean, the star, is just like the third receiver in 11 personnel. That guy's a starter on your football team. So when you're drafting receivers, it's not just hey, I'm drafting a receiver. I need someone that can play in the slot. So we really view the star, the nickel, we view that as a starter. 5 DB defenses lead the NFL by a wide margin. You're playing 65% or more 5 DB groupings, and it doesn't matter what team you coach for, or what system you run. You're in 5 DBs 65% or more. So it's, corner is definitely going to be something that we're looking at. We're always going to be looking at it as long as I'm the head coach. We are going to be looking for corners because, like he mentioned, you're aware of these receivers that we have to defend. That's real in terms of who you have to defend in the passing game, the quarterbacks, the wideouts, the backs, the tight ends. And you don't do that if you don't have a bunch of cover guys out there. So Asante gives us that flex to go inside. I think when we evaluated him, we felt like that was something that he could do. He proved that he could do it in camp, to an extent. But we really wanted, based off who we had, the best thing for Asante was to play outside, knowing that we had Chris. And I think that allowed Asante to get off to a really good start as a player instead of, hey, maybe pulled in a couple, too many directions early. I think now Asante's a lot more ready for that. A lot more prepared, but we're just going to see how it goes. But I can promise you that we're always going to be looking for corners.
Brandon, do you feel like last year you guys a little lacked the consistency with speed on offense? It feels like some of these younger teams are obviously, like you said, Jamar Chase. Some of these guys are taking the tops off of the defense. Do you feel like you guys lack consistency in that area?
Fernando, I think it's a good question. I think every offense is built a little differently. I definitely am not going to complain about our output. Offensively, we were one of the top, 5 offenses in the league, and I think all the metrics would tell you that. And I think what that element does, though, Fernando, when you have to defend the top shelf of the coverage we call it level 3, the top shelf of the coverage, it opens up a lot for your offense when you have that threat, if it's legitimate. Now, if everyone knows that you can get there, but when that guy's on the field, everyone knows what's going on, that's not worth that much. So what you're after is you're after complete receivers who can get there. It's not just a fast guy. You need a receiver that can run the tree. And I think that, you talk about Jamar. That's not the only thing Jamar does well. Jamar does a lot after the catch, and Tyreek Hill they do a lot after the catch. And so I think that's an element, though, that you bring up that's such a good point, though. If you can find it, you definitely need to be looking for it. And I know that we are. I know that we value it because I know from my side what we have to defend. Like when you can access that part of the field with a player, it changes the way you play, and it's going to open up a lot more for your other players like Austin and Mike, Keenan, all these guys that play for us.
Two more guys. To kind of build on those receiver questions, do you think the depth of great receiver play in the NFL and college, do you think that's led to more of seeing more cover 2 and more cover 4 to kind of help defend a lot of those receivers, especially like the 4 wide receiver sets?
Yeah, I mean, I think split safety gives you a numbers advantage in the passing game. I mean, that if you're going to play single safety, especially if you play single safety man, it's going to come down to matchups. Now, you can trick out the rotation to hide some leverages, which what we do when we are playing single safety. But I think, split safety gives you an advantage in the passing game, and it allows you, in some instances, to take a roof over the coverage, put a roof on the coverage. But it's still going to come down to, in this league, can you cover or not? No matter what coverage system you play, you have to be able to cover, because I promise you, if you guys have seen anything the last 5 years with these quarterbacks, is if there's a bunch of air in the coverage, they're going to find it. They're going to find it. You put a bunch of air in the coverage, you'll wake up and they'll have 80%, 85% completion for like 300, 400. And with their mobility, playing zone is the worst thing to play because you're not connected, and then they're going to find it. So that's why, you're seeing so much output offensively, is because of how special these quarterbacks are and how good the skill players are.
I kind of wanted to build off of that. One of the things that I think that you've done really well is being able to take away what offenses do best. I mean, obviously then comes a conversation about how you take care of the adjustments that happen within a game. So for you as a coach, how do you approach that? Are you looking at it in terms of more things schematically? What is the embracing of guys having to win one-on-one situations? Like, how do you articulate that to your staff and to your players throughout the league?
Yeah, I think you got to go into each game and treat that like it has a life of its own, and you really got to start with matchups first before you get into their schemes. Is who are the players who can hurt you, and then who are the players who you can take advantage of, and it's always going to be a matchup league that way, and that's why I love the NFL. And then I think when you go into it, it's not, well, hey, I would like to play this way versus them, but maybe you don't have the armor to play that way. And I tell our team all the time is like, with the NFL, why the NFL is amazing is because you do what you have to do, not what you want to do. And if you do what you want to do, that just means you're loaded and you got all the players, which that league's not set up this way. So it may be like that in college, but it's not like that in the NFL, and that's why the games are so close. That's why they all come down to the fourth quarter, and that's why it's the most popular sport in the world, because it's tight. And so that's what I love about it.